All right, on this Thirsty Thursday, we welcome another paranormal investigator. He's the founder of his own paranormal society, a collector of oddities, the manager of a haunted property, and a significantly seasoned paranormal investigator, hosting exploration events all over the country while he has his own YouTube series. So welcome to Spooky Happy Hour, Steve Brodt.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you and thanks for being here. But before we get into today's video, just a quick thank you to all of our followers and just a reminder to like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't already on our channel. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss a spooky moment. Now, back to what we really want to know. Did you bring a drink with you and what are you drinking?
Did I bring? So I brought water with me. It's 95 degrees here today. So
fair enough.
Drinking some water. I did a little drinking on one of my streams a couple nights ago. So I'm taking a few days off from that. It got a little crazy. So
are you still streaming on Twitch, right?
Yeah,
you were doing some video
Twitch
games.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm really bad at Fortnite, but it's fun. So
oh gosh, first person shooters I cannot do.
Yeah, I'm not good at it, but it's fun. We have a lot of fun with it. We played a little bit of the Chain Together game the other day. It's like this parkour game where you like tied your teammates, and I had a really dumb idea of every time we fall, we chug whatever we were drinking, forgetting how bad we were at the game. And it was like our first two falls were 3 minutes apart, and it was downhill from there.
You're like, how long can we even play?
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't a good idea.
Oh, no. That's the best time though, right?
It was fun.
What do you usually do then in your like off time? Because I know that was like one of the things that you do, but you know, when it's freaking nor'eastern weather over here, like you can't really do shit besides sit at home. So what do you do when you're not gallivanting in haunted places?
Oh man, even in the winter, we're on the road probably a couple weeks a month because we do a lot of we try to get ahead on filming in the winter for the YouTube channel, because then when the events start, it's just so hectic trying to film and do events. But when I'm home, I got a 9-year-old rescue pup with my wife, so we spend a lot of time with our dog Luna and do some stuff around the house that I don't get to do throughout the rest of the year, and just kind of hang out and see my family because I'm never home. So
yeah, well, I bet they can't wait for that time too, just to like have a break and get back to like some sort of like normal parts of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and thinking back to, you know, to family, like one of your earliest childhood experiences came when you were like 5. I feel like other people like remember their like 5th birthday party or like riding a bike for the first time, but like you remember an old woman at the end of your bed poking at you, and then you actually found out later it was your great grandma.
Yeah. So I was sleeping at my grandmother's house that night, and she was still alive at the time, and I was sleeping in her bedroom, and her and my sister were sleeping in the living room, and I woke up to this poking, and I thought it was my grandma waking me up for, you know, the morning or whatever. And as soon as I opened my eyes, I realized it was not my grandma sitting at the end of my bed. But I mean, she was solid, clear as day. I could see the indent in the bed where she was sitting. I could make out every detail. I can still see her perfectly to this day. It messed me up for a while when I was a kid. Like I wouldn't do sleepovers at people's houses. I was too scared that I would see this lady. And it wasn't probably till 10 or so years later that I realized with a family photo that it was my great grandmother.
Oh, so it was like 10 years later. I thought that it was like maybe like 2, 3.
No,
but you had that image for like a freaking decade. So when you were older, obviously, then it like clicked better. So it's like, what happened when it clicked for you?
It was one of those moments where like it had freaked me out so long, like when I was growing up. And then, you know, some of the shows that started coming out, like A Haunting and like those reenactment shows, and those used to freak me out, but I was interested in them. And then, you know, Ghost Hunter started coming out in like 2004 or whatever. And it was a little bit after that I saw this picture, and I was like, okay, how is it possible, right? How is it possible that this woman who I did not meet, she passed away before I was born, could see me, and not only see me, but interact with me physically, where I could feel her touching me, and I could see the indent in the bed. There was enough there that it actually like interacted with the physical world. And that to me was like, how is that possible? And then the show started coming out. I was like, okay, people go and look for this. Like they go try to figure this out. And now I have all these questions, and I'm a little bit less scared of it at this point. So now's the time to like go try to get answers on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think that like if like that didn't happen to you when you were younger, do you think that you would still have like gone down the same path?
I don't know. It's it's one of those things where, because like I still watch the shows growing up, but I don't know if like subconsciously I was watching them because of that experience happening to me. I don't know. I don't know if I would end up doing this. I like to say she gave me a little jump start in my career. She probably could have done it in a better way, but you know,
just poking you in the right direction, literally.
Like, this is going to be what you do.
That's awesome.
I love it. So you founded a multi-generational paranormal investigation society with your mom and your grandpa called the Glen Falls Paranormal Society. What was it like investigating with them?
It was cool. I started that when I was 16, when I was in high school. It was again after like Ghost Hunters been out for a while, and I started getting into like, you know, trying to investigate locations. But again, as a 16-year-old kid, nobody's going to trust me in their building after hours for, you know, walking around in the dark, which I get. So my first ever ghost hunt was with the guys from Ghost Hunters. They used to do events, and I went to one of theirs in like 2009. And then I went to another one and another one. I was like, okay, I really want to do this, but I don't want to pay this much money to do it every time. So I started the group, and it was me, a couple of friends from high school, and then my mom and my grandfather were into it because my grandpa kind of is the one that told us about Ghost Hunters. He was the one that kind of told us about the TV show. And so my mom and I would spend every single Wednesday back then, you know, watching it. And she always likes to say, you know, not many high school kids and middle school kids hang out with their mom every single week on a night and watch TV, but like that was our thing. We'd sit down every Wednesday night and watch the new episode and like talk about these locations. And so I started it with everybody there, and it was cool. I mean, her and my grandfather did a lot of the big trips with us back then. They've both been to Waverly Hills, both been out to Rolling Hills and, you know, Hillview Manor. They've been all over the place. So it was cool. It was cool getting my start and getting to investigate with them. I actually just investigated with my mom again a couple weeks ago. She came out to one of our local events here. So she still does it. She still does it when we're in the area.
Did they do any of that like before you had your experience and whatnot? Like, were they into all of those things before you?
Yeah, they were into it. Like my mom and my grandpa have always been kind of interested in that stuff, watching the shows and everything, but they'd never investigated anywhere. We would do like, you know, the ghost tours and the ghost walks on vacation and hear the stories and stuff. But it was after I had that experience and kind of figured out who I think it was and like all this stuff that was going on. And I saw that, you know, these places weren't that far away. You know, the first ghost hunt I did was in Buffalo at the Central Terminal out by Courtney, actually. And so we went to that event and they both went to it. And so my first ever real ghost hunt, they were both there, which was cool. And we were walking around there that night. All we had was like 3 flashlights. That was our equipment. You know what I mean? Like we didn't have anything. We didn't know what we were doing. So it was cool to start that and then just kind of branch out and see it grow. Cause I did that group for 10, 11 years before I started Haunted Nights. So we did a lot of investigations.
That's really awesome. I don't think that like we hear many like families that investigate together. I think that it's even like the most rare that like they do it. And I think also something that's rare is that parents want to encourage that type of stuff. I feel like most parents are like, maybe like, let's go down this track, or don't you want to do something like this? But that's so cool that you've had their support, because I don't think that that's something that we've heard from a lot of people.
Yeah, no, very, very lucky. My graduation present from high school was my first trip to Waverly Hills. So it's like, you know, they've been super supportive of it. And I think that was partially from my mom too. She wanted to go. So she was like, hey, we get to go to Waverly kind of thing. But it's been cool. It's been a lot of fun.
I feel like that's what my mom tells me the most too. She's like, if I give her like an experience, mostly it's also maybe 10% because I really want to do it too. Yeah. Like her first, I think it was like her first time ever with like a medium or a psychic. We were in Casadega, Florida. And I had just taken her down there for her birthday. And I'm like, hey, I got you like an extra part of the present. She's like, well, what do you want to do? Like, what is this? You know? And I was like, well, don't you want to go see what this is all about? And I thought that was like, just the fact that she like said, okay, sure, let's do that was like enough. I could never imagine her going anywhere with me. I feel like when I leave for like to go to an event, she's like, don't bring any shit home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my mom was the same. Like when she would investigate, she would always say before she leaves, you know, you're not welcome to come home with me. You have to stay here. That we'll come back and talk to you, that kind of thing. I never really got into that. I was just like, whatever. Like if they come with me, I don't have to drive back there. It's a shorter commute if they're in my house. But it's funny. Her biggest thing every time is bats. She hates bats more than anything. So
really,
if a place is full of bats, she's like, I'm good. I don't
not going.
Yeah.
Well, and you said before too, like you're not religious, like you don't believe in like the demonic possession, so like you don't necessarily protect yourself. You're not gonna say like, "Hey, stay here." So, what do you believe in, and how do you think people's like values and belief impact investigations, or do they?
I think they definitely do, because you know, I have friends that are very religious, and a lot of them believe that anything that happens that is deemed negative, whether it's you get scratched or if something growls or swears at you or whatever it is, like they have to, or if they say they're a demon, they have to be a demon. And that's their belief. And, you know, that's where I find the biggest divide in a lot of things between the paranormal. Like there's two sides of paranormal. There's the YouTube side of paranormal, and then there's everybody else. And I've been on both sides of it. And there's such a huge divide because everybody on the non-paranormal YouTube side thinks that the YouTubers are ruining the paranormal field because everything's a demon and it's this and this and that. And whereas like, we don't believe necessarily in like demons and demonic possession and all that kind of stuff. I have no right to tell somebody how to interpret their experience, right? Like, so their experience at a location is their experience, and it's based on their beliefs. They're gonna react to every single thing differently than anybody else based on their beliefs. So if they have this experience and to them it is a demon based on what they believe, then it's a demon to them. And that doesn't mean it's what everybody believes a demon is. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people get too narrow-sighted on that word, that they're so focused on, well, if you say it's a demon, then it's Satan and he's from hell and it's this and it's that and it's all this. Whereas that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it is. That's just what these people, based on their beliefs, think they encountered. And what do I know? I'm not dead. I don't know how it works. It might be, you know what I mean? So it's like, it could be some old grumpy guy or it could be a demon. I'm just standing here in the dark talking to myself. I don't know. So it's like, I don't know. That's
I wonder, like, if like people are saying that like during their experiences, like then are they creating something after like having that too? Yeah. So it's like all these different layers in one place.
100%. You can create like the haunting or a vibe or even the mindset, right? Like somebody that comes into an investigation after, if 10 groups before them said, oh, we encountered a grumpy old man, that group is going to have a bias going in there. They're going to be looking for a grumpy old man. So if they say it's a demon, people are going in there saying there's probably a demon here because that's what everybody else says. And then anything that's even slightly unfriendly, well, they're like, oh, this must be the demon that everybody's talking about. You know what I mean? So it's so hard. You just have to really kind of I think just go on what you believe and don't really let anybody else dictate what you do. If a location doesn't have an issue with people claiming that they experienced a demon there, then that's nobody else's problem. That's not your battle to fight.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense too. And I think that it is really important to say, like, you know, everyone's coming in there with their own experiences that they've had, with their own values, their own beliefs, no matter how many times that those have all changed. Right. And I think it would be remiss to say that then like the story doesn't change about like what, you know, what happens there. It's like, of course it has to evolve. And I was listening to, I can't remember which podcast, but you had mentioned that like maybe heaven is just like this afterlife of your like happiest times, and like your consciousness kind of plays a role in whatever afterlife you get. And you had an experience that kind of like solidified that for you, which is at the Emery House, I think it was called. Can you talk more about what that like was and how you came to that realization?
Well, it's weird because that was a very interesting location for us to investigate. I know Dylan is a little bit more religious than me, but he's very similar in beliefs. We've been investigating it for 10 years. He started investigating me when he was 12 years old. So he's been at it for a long time with me. So we've kind of developed the same kind of beliefs because we've done so many investigations together. But that was an interesting one for us because that place was owned by a very, very religious person. He used to do like a Bible school out of the basement, and like that's all it was about there. So it was kind of an interesting dynamic for us to go in there and try to interact with them. And we have been asking questions about, you know, is this your heaven? Is this why you're still here? And they said yes. Because everybody, I think, always assumes that, you know, people might get trapped at locations, but maybe they chose, right? That was the happiest moment of their lives. They might have lived 70 more years after they left this building and died thousands of miles away. But if you have any say in it, or if it is just your conscious or your subconscious deciding, why wouldn't you go back to where you were the happiest in life or the most at peace? And if that was that spot, that's kind of how it was. And just like the conversation back and forth with it there was really the first time that we had gotten more of like a direct answer with that. Like, is this your heaven? Is this why you chose to be here? And they were like, yes, this is it. We picked here. This is where we want to be. So it was just kind of cool that at least that person seemed to be able to choose where they wanted to go.
Yeah. If you like, you know, if you particularly had to choose your afterlife, like what would yours look like?
Man, Sheetz, probably. I really like Sheetz.
Oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah, Sheetz gas stations.
You Americans.
Sheetz gas stations are like, they're up there. Like that's in the top 3 for sure. Sheetz is so good. I get Sheetz every time we're on the road because we don't have any in New York. So it's like,
Right.
we don't get them until we get way out there in Pennsylvania and Buffalo, or past Buffalo there. So we don't get them that often. So it's, that's up there. But I don't know, like I'm in a pretty good spot right now. Like I'm pretty good where I'm at right now. We had a cool 115-year-old house. We have our dog. We've been married for, going on 7 years now. We're pretty good. We get to both do something we love for work. She works for herself. She owns a marketing company. I get to travel all over the place and talk to ghosts. So we're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. So in your afterlife, you're still doing the same thing
Yeah,
that
sure,
you're doing
for
right
sure.
now.
Yep, for sure. Never ends. Never ends.
I was gonna say you might have to let me into your own personal slice of heaven for
Yeah.
sheets because I have to talk about it. Courtney and I shared our favorite orders last time because mine, I've one like less than a mile up the street. Like I could walk to it, and it's honestly it's the worst. Like I had this app once that gives me notifications based on like my spending trends and whatnot. Usually I just tell it to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But it was like, you spent X amount in sheets in the last 3 months, and I was like, should I like take some stock? Like, should I invest? Because this has to pay off at some point.
Right. Right. That's like, it's funny because like we don't obviously have the sheets near us, but I'm a big Chipotle fan, right? Like I love Chipotle. And it got to the point where like we both work from home. So like we DoorDash a lot of food and we get a lot of Chipotle because it's good and it's not that bad for you. And it got to the point we were doing our taxes last year and our tax lady was like, hey, you guys, you spend a lot of money at Chipotle. I'm like, listen,
oh no,
I pay you to do my taxes, not criticize me. All right. I like to eat Chipotle. Leave me alone.
I like this food.
Yeah.
Right. She's probably like, do you have like a recurring order for Chipotle that you know about? Or
well, Sheets like doesn't help either because like Sheets is open 24 hours. So there's one, there's one 4 minutes down the road from Madison. So it's like every single time we go to Madison, we go to Sheets multiple times because it's right there. We get done at 4 a.m. We pack up. We all go to Sheets to get some snacks. Our last event there in May, it was basically just like a bunch of people from our Discord bought tickets. The entire event was just people from our Discord. So it was kind of fun. It was a big hangout and like the event ended at 4 and the event just swarmed Sheets. There was like 25 of us in Sheets at 5 a.m. They didn't know what to do.
Oh no.
It made like this other guy really upset because he came in right after us after everybody had ordered and he wasn't expecting there to be 20 orders in front of him. So he was a little upset, but Sheets plays into it. I tag them in an Instagram post. They sent me a shirt. They sent me some pins, a magnet.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, no, I reached my freak status like 2 months into the year. And nobody sent me shit.
I got a magnet that says, the magnet says Sheets Freak on board. It's a big like circle magnet. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah,
Just
like,
after party at Sheets.
That's it.
Right?
That's all it is.
On like first name basis with the manager down the street. And be like, yo, where's my magnet, man?
I need my shirt, my magnet, a bunch of pins. Yeah.
All I have is Tim Hortons. Like they know me by my first name here. I need to like experience the Sheets because Bree just doesn't shut the fuck up about it.
It's so good.
She came to Penhurst and they only have Wawa. I was like, don't ruin your palate. Like, do not try Pennsylvania gas station food and ruin your palate with Wawa. Just wait till you get to Pittsburgh and we'll go to Sheets.
It's so good. And it's always there. It's always there for me. It's 24 hours. So, the event ends at 5, 6 a.m. or whatever time we're done filming at 6 a.m. I can still go get whatever I want. And it's
hell yeah, stable, reliable.
That's it.
It just sounds like a best friend, really.
It is.
Like...
it's always there for us,
Hell yeah.
Oh my god, that's so.
Now I'm wondering though. I wonder how many ghosts in the multiverse like Sheets, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, if my afterlife was Sheets and other people's were too, I'm like, I'm just creating this one timeline in like the multiverse of ghosts that we're all just going to be at Sheets. So tell me about like the ghosts of the multiverse and like your theory and what you've learned over the years.
So that's a newer thing for us too. Recently, in the last couple years, probably we've gotten more into like maybe it's not dead people, right? Like maybe that's not who we're interacting with. We've just had so many weird experiences recently because with YouTube, like we started filming and investigating a lot more with the events we were doing, every Friday and Saturday, pretty much 3 weekends a month we were investigating, which is a lot. But now it's every Friday and Saturday we have events and then we're filming Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And that, you know what I mean? So it's like we're investigating 5 or 6 days a week sometimes for most of the year. So it's like we're running into new ideas and new theories. And Dylan is interesting about it because he got in a really bad car accident a few years ago. He fell asleep driving home from an investigation and he flipped his car, went through 4 telephone poles. Like the kid should be dead. He should not be alive. And he got a bruise on the back of his arm. That's all he had. He did not get hurt at all. No broken bones, no stitches, nothing. And so we've been talking about like, what if what if he did die, right? In 9 of these other universes, he died, but his subconscious didn't want to die. It's like quantum immortality or something. So it created this universe in his mind where he's still alive. So he's still just living this life as if he didn't die in the accident and he just got a bruise. And we've run into things where, again, like, what if we're the ghost? What if we're creating the haunting? What if everything is existing at one time? We had an experience it wasn't even an experience. It was more of a thought process. We were at Trans-Allegheny like a year and a half ago. And we were filming Sam and Colby, and we were walking down the hallway. We weren't even filming at this point. We were just moving to the next spot, and everybody's kind of just talking. And I'm off in my own world thinking about things. And we opened a door to go up to the next level of the stairs. And I just held the door for everybody. They went through, and I just closed the door and walked up. But my mind was like, okay, what if for some reason, like the multiverse, it bled through for a second, right? And in that moment where I closed the door, it was 1950 in that hallway. And there's a nurse sitting at the nurse's station. She doesn't see us. She doesn't hear us, but she sees and hears the door open and close by itself. And she's like, holy shit, this place is haunted, right? And so she goes and tells other people at work, and they're like, oh, that's weird. I've had this experience here, and I've had this here. And so now word starts getting passed down that Trans-Allegheny is haunted. And that's the only reason where they're investigating it 80 years later. But it's actually us creating the haunting in this weird time slip thing. So we're investigating ourselves. I mean, we've caught voices on recordings that sound like us or sound like Courtney, or what if it is just us at a different time? You know what I mean? It's one of those things now where I was like, I wish it was just as simple as you die, you're a ghost, and you haunt a place. And I just don't think it is that easy anymore. There's too much to it.
I think it would, like, for me, I always thought it was that way until I had like learned more about like the egregore and all of these different like concepts. And I was like, wait a minute, like this just blew open so many other doors. And with anybody else that has like their own theories or their own thought processes or whatever their experiences are, like, then there's 20 more belief systems about like what could happen. And I'm like, what if they're all true?
Right. And that's what we really like about the events. The events are a ton of fun because we have our regulars that come to a lot of events, but there's a handful, however many, every investigation that we've never investigated with before. Some of them have never investigated at all before. Some of them have been doing it a little bit. So it's cool to investigate with different people every weekend because, like you just said, everybody's got different beliefs, different mindset. They're going to react to everything differently. Their thought process is going to be different. So if you're in a room with one group of people one weekend and something happens, somebody in that room's thought process and next line of questioning is going to be very different from yours and from somebody else's. So their line of questioning might be the right one in that moment. Whereas if you're with somebody else, it might be a different line of questioning. So we get to learn a lot every weekend too, from different people's beliefs and ideas and people thinking of things that we would have never thought of. It doesn't matter if you've been investigating for 5 minutes, 5 years, or 50 years. Nobody knows anything about anything at this point. We're all just kind of guessing, really.
Yeah. That's so true. I'm curious though, have you ever heard of the Philip experiment?
I have not.
Okay. So the Philip experiment was in 1972. It was like a parapsychology experiment that was conducted in Toronto, Ontario. And it was to determine whether subjects can communicate with fictionalized ghosts through expectations of human will. So they would kind of create like a fictional scene, and they'd sit around a table, create a seance, but they all would think of like the same person and like try to come up with like, I think they tried to come up with like a soldier or something, like, let's make up this character. Let's see if we can create it and cause something to react from that.
That's pretty cool. I like that because I think a lot of times people do that on accident in investigations now, right? Because like if one group goes in and gets a garbled EVP and they're like, oh, I think that said my name's Emily, right? And then they run with that and they tell the location owner, hey, we got this little girl named Emily on this floor. Through Estes and K2, she said she was 9 and her mom lived here. And now the owner's like, okay, cool, I have a story, right? And so they start telling people, and now the next group comes in and they start asking for Emily. And if there's another spirit there, it might be named Bill. It might not even be a 9-year-old girl, but they're like, man, everybody comes in here every time and is just asking for this little 9-year-old girl, Emily. Nobody ever wants to talk to me. Well, what if I answer to Emily? What if I just talk as Emily and then they'll talk to me? So it's like, I think it's a very similar thing where we're creating a lot of our own stories and hauntings in these locations just because we don't know any better, right? Like we think we get a name and we're like, oh, we have to run with it. It's got to be what it is. And it just creates this never ending thing because it gets passed down from every group. People like to know who they're trying to talk to when they get to a spot, right? So they're like, okay, what are the stories? Well, who's here? Who are we trying to interact with? Instead of just going in blind. And if, again, one group 3 years ago got the name Emily and that story keeps getting passed down, now there's a little girl named Emily at this location if there's never been one. You know what I mean? So
that's true.
Very similar. Yeah.
There's a like a local like haunted hotspot. Never knew that it was haunted whatsoever. I spent like 10 years in Colorado, but I came back to Pennsylvania like 2 years ago, and I heard about it and they were doing investigations, and I was like, what? Like, there is no way. Like, I've never heard about any of this. And I went in blind on like one of their public haunts, public ghost hunts. There wasn't like a ton of people, which was actually really nice. But they didn't tell us anything, no history, no nothing. So I had no idea what to expect. Right. And then we like literally put all of these pieces to a story together about like two people getting into a fight. One was a man and one was a woman. She was a prostitute. He wasn't. She got like pregnant, and then like there was a forced abortion and she died from like lack of medical care. And it's like, I had no expectation of that going into it. And then I go under for my first ever like Estes method, because I would prefer to know my surroundings and ask the questions rather than go under. But I did. And I was like, these are such off the wall like shit. I was like, I don't even know what they would be saying. And I like come out of it and like people are crying in the room. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? They were like, everything that you said like matched all of these different things, and like then there was a story that was like either created that time and whatnot, and then we've told it, like I've told it several times, not even just at that location, but just to other people, and some other people have gone there like because of it. So I think that it's just, we all have one, you know, that we may have been able to just create at a certain place.
100%. But we don't know. That could be a real story. You know what I mean? Like that very well could be a real story. We just don't know. And I think that's what's so cool about it. You don't know. And 15 years in at this point, I got way more questions than when I started. I don't know anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, it's wild.
Well, they even say too, like doors or portals. So if you're entering through one portal, going into the other, like, how do you know, like, are you entering into a different timeline, a different dimension, a different realm? Like, whatever you want to call it, like, and even
every little decision can change everything. You don't know.
And it's weird. We creating that? Are we creating the portal? Just thinking that, like,
our friend, one of our friends, Courtney, one of our mutual friends between us and Courtney, her name's Deanna. We were there's a jail out here near our house that we've been investigating since like 2011. We've been going there forever. And we know of one gentleman that took his own life. We know it for a fact. We actually met the officer that found him the day it happened. And he came on the investigation with us and like kind of gave us some information about why he was in there and like what his life was like and that kind of stuff. You know, out of respect, we always just say his first name when we're at a location. We don't tell anybody else any of his other history. And so we've been going there for 11 years. Always like, the guy's name was Ron. We said, Ron, you know, why did you do this? Why did you take your own life? Why did you do it this way? What happened? Why? And our one friend randomly texted me one day, Deanna, and she goes, what if we killed Ron? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, what if he's in his jail cell 30 years ago and all he's hearing is us going, why did you kill yourself, Ron? Ron, kill yourself. Why did you do that? Ron. And he's asking everybody else, like, guys, are you hearing these voices? Like, the jail's old. Like, is it haunted? And they're all like, no, man, what are you talking about? Right. And he just couldn't take it. And so
that's wild.
I was like, thank you. That makes me feel terrible. Thank you so much.
Well, I kind of wonder too, because like there's confirmation bias, of course, which already kind of like has that layer to it before you go in. But then when you have all of these different theories in your head too, like how do you just kind of like tune it out and get in there to do what you're supposed to do? Because I'm sure that having all those thoughts in your head would like muddle what you actually do in the moment.
Yeah, it's hard, especially with like, it's so hard with YouTube is so different. Like when we're filming for a YouTube investigation versus like when we're just investigating, because we have a time crunch. We have to film. We have to, you know what I mean? Like when we're at just an investigation, we're like, I mean, we got 8 hours. That's a long time. But when you're filming and you got to do B-roll, you got to do, you know, all this other stuff, it's not as long. So it's like, I think on those investigations, it's easier to just clear our minds because we have a set plan, right? We have to do this. We have to go to this room. We have to talk to this. But it is hard not to get tunnel vision. We like to go to a lot of locations that are maybe a little bit lesser known than some other people, just because we don't want that. We're also really bad at YouTube. So like, we're really bad at planning things. Like we're so bad at it that there's times we'll book a location. Like we do it all the time, book a location the day of. And we've never been there before. Like we're 5 hours away. We just finished filming. We got to film somewhere else. We book it. We drive there. We do it. And we did that last year with a spot in Ohio. knew nothing about this place. Just knew it had been a funeral home at one point, and then this guy bought it for his house, and now he runs investigations. That's all we knew about it. And so we got there and we started getting like a lot of answers that lined up with the guy that built the house and why he built it. And we had no idea about any of this. So that was cool. But it is hard not to get tunnel vision, because now next time we go back there, we're going to be looking for the same person, right? Like we're going to be trying to interact with this same spirit, no matter how hard we try, because we know he's there. We've already interacted with him.
Right. And then a year from now, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, did we create him? What did we do?
Right. Was he real?
Yeah.
Am I even in the house? Is this a real house?
Right?
Anxiety and panic
literally.
everywhere you go.
Staying in the dark, like, am I actually here right now?
Right.
Oh gosh, and then you just rabbit hole.
Yep, that's it. It's like, what if I
point?
take the blindfold off and nobody's here, and I haven't, you know what I mean? Like, we do that to Courtney a lot, though. We do leave her when she's under Estes. Like, she'll be under.
Oh my gosh, you fuckers! I would die.
I don't know. I don't know why Courtney hangs out with us. I really don't. Like, we're terrible to her.
I think she was questioning that too.
She does. Yeah, she does. I think she had fun like the first like 6 months, and now she's in too deep. We're helping us for the events. It's like we'll handcuff her to a jail cell and just be like, all right, we'll see you later, and then just leave. Or like. She does her Estes. She's like, you guys better not leave me, and we always leave her. So she
remember, like when she was like, when she wouldn't do any solos.
Oh, she wouldn't
at all. Like refuse, and now she's like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, she knows we're not gonna. Yeah, we're not gonna give up on her, so we're gonna make her do it. And no, she's a trooper. Courtney puts up with a lot.
That's so awesome though. And like just to have the community that like brings all of you together to end up doing those things. And like you said, meeting people from all different walks of life and all different belief systems, and how that like influences, I'm sure, like your style too, and like what you take from other people and incorporate in your own investigations. Yeah,
it's cool because like me and Courtney met through Instagram, you know, just following each other on Instagram and talking for a while. But there's a very good chance I was her tour guide at Rolling Hills at one point. Because I was a tour guide there for 3 years, and she used to go out there around the same time, and like it's a very good chance that I was her tour guide, you know, 10 years ago, and I didn't know who she was. And then we meet on Instagram, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, and now we're great friends. And it's funny how it works. Like we should have crossed paths multiple times, like a decade ago at these investigations, and we may have, and we just didn't know it.
Yeah, it's like that right time, like right place, and you
don't
get it until you get it.
But, you know. Yeah.
Another parallel universe.
Yeah. He's like, I got stuck in this universe. It sucks.
Damn it. So speaking of investigators you've investigated with, what was it like investigating with Amy Bruni and Adam Berry?
That was cool. That was one of my early investigations. We did I actually found the investigation tape from that yesterday, which is funny you bring it up. We did Eastern State Penitentiary in like November of 2010. It was a long time ago. Eastern State doesn't even allow investigations there anymore, which is
I was just gonna say that we had a freaking bummer.
They said like the paranormal no longer aligns with future plans for the site, which doesn't make any sense, but that's
sounds like the same shit they did with Crescent.
Yeah. It's like, oh man, you don't like money? That's weird.
Right. Like why would anybody like, you know, deter from that type of traffic?
Right. Whatever. It was cool because it was one of the Ghost Hunters events back in the day that they did. Amy had been on Ghost Hunters for a little while, but Adam had just won Ghost Hunters Academy like right before that. So he was still very, very new into like the TV show world of it and like being known for it. The events were bigger back then. There was a lot of people and they kind of moved you around from group to group. But I just remember Amy being a sweetheart, like a very, very nice person, taking pictures of everybody who talked to her. Very, very smart, very knowledgeable about everything she was talking about. People listen when Amy talks. You know what I mean? Like she knows what she's talking about. People can see that. Adam, again, still being new. I think he was a little bit nervous at that point, but he did great. I mean, he was, again, super, super friendly, funny. He brought humor into the investigation, which was good, especially in a big, scary prison. Because I was 17 when I went there. I was a kid.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like I was by myself. Me and my friend went to Philadelphia, took a train down, and just went to this event. And there was actually like gunshots outside the prison that night. So it was like this whole thing going on. I'm there like, I'm going to die in the prison.
You got like way more than you bargained for.
Yeah. But they were great. They were a ton of fun. I haven't investigated with either of them since then, but if I remember correctly, they'll be at New Jersey Para Unity this November. And we do that. We're down there every year for that convention. So it'll be good to run into them. I got to buy Jason Hawes a drink last year, which was funny at the VIP party. I told him, you know, I gotta buy this drink for you because you were my first ever investigation when I was 16 in 2009. And I wouldn't be
Isn't
doing
that
this full time.
wild?
Yeah, it's wild. He's like, man, thank you. You just made me feel really old.
Oh, no.
He's like, I'll take the drink, but you made me feel really, really old. So it's cool. It's like a weird kind of everything came back together. So it'd be cool to hang out with Amy and Adam again.
Right, kind of full circle moment.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll be there too, so we'll
Oh,
get to
yeah.
see you in person
Yeah.
too.
Jersey is a time. Jersey.
So
That's
we've
what we
heard.
keep hearing, and I'm just
Jersey.
like, my expectations are growing, and it probably is not
know.
okay. But
I'm like, should I be nervous?
Did you guys book their hotel? Like, did you guys get? Oh boy.
Yeah,
All right.
we're at the conversation.
Oh boy. Yeah. Man. The VIP parties are fun. They go till like 11, and then the actual party starts after that at
afterwards.
the hotel. Usually the last few people are kind of filtering out of the lobby by about 4:30 in the morning.
Holy shit.
Yeah. You got to be back over at the convention at like 9 a.m. too.
Yeah.
So by Sunday last year, we were in trouble when we got there. We were
Oh.
so tired. We were.
Oh, I bet.
Whew, it's fun though. It's a good time.
I'm
it's a really good
excited
time.
now.
I'm super excited.
It's a good time. It's cool.
Because I have like, the investigation with y'all at the end of the month. And then I think that I'm going to go to MadCon. So I'll be at Madison again in September. And then we have that in November. And then, my world shuts down because Pennsylvania sucks for anything in the winter.
Cold. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like for the next 6 to 7 months, I'm not going to be doing shit. So it's like I've planned my whole calendar and I'm just super excited to like now see faces that are familiar and to just get it's kind of like those full circle, ones that moments that you were mentioning was that like I've seen these people for decades on TV. And I mean, like yours for even like your YouTube channel, I've been watching you for, a long time. It's like, now we have our podcast and like you're on it. So, and it just seems like when those things do happen, it kind of just like you're on the right path at the right time. Like, so this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And the best thing about those events is too, like everybody that we've met from Jason, Steve Gonzalez, Dave Tango, like obviously Tanner, Dakota, Chelsea, Alex, and all of them, Connor from the show. They're all the nicest people. They're super, super chill. Like all of the guys, especially from Project Fear, they're the exact same in person as they are on the show, on Destination Fear, on Project Fear. Like very chill, very down to earth, like to have a good time, like to laugh. Chelsea is funny because me and Chelsea are like the same age. She's a few months older than me, whereas like Dakota and all of them are a few years younger than us. So it's like we got back to the hotel. They came in, I think, on Friday night last year. And so we'd already been to the VIP party. It was like me, Dylan, our friend Kalani and his wife Sav. And we get back to the hotel. It's, 11:30 and everybody's getting ready to continue the party and, continue drinking or whatever. We're getting back and I walk in and Chelsea's in there. She's, oh, hey, Steve. So I walk up and I'm talking to her and she's got like a hoodie and sweatpants on and she's got one drink and she's like, I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed in like 20 minutes. And I'm like, yep, me too. I'm like, I'm not drinking here. I'm like, I told Dylan to have fun. I'll drive us back. And I was like, me and you are on the same page. We're too old for this. We're just going to hang out for a little bit.
Right. I feel like, once you hit over 30, like your decisions have to be different.
Yeah, 100%. Where Dylan's a child. Like Dylan's only 22. He's an infant.
He's a baby.
He's a baby. Like so he's like, just getting into that. So we got back to the hotel. Like I had 1 or 2 drinks at the VIP party, hanging out, eating dinner, but we got back to the hotel because we weren't staying at the hotel last year. We stayed at a different one. We got back and I was like, have fun. You go drink, you do you. Like I'll drive us back. I'm too old for this shit. Like if I drink tonight, I'm not making it to that conference in the morning. So I'm like, you go have fun.
No. I heard Kalani was like buying people shots. And like Dakota was a little nervous of taking too many shots.
So Kalani doesn't ever drink really. And he drank that night. At one point, somebody, I think it was Alex, had a bottle of, I think it was tequila. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who had it, but Alex at one point handed it to me and I'm just holding it. I'm not even drinking. I'm just holding it. And there's probably like a third of it left. I'm standing there. I had it for like 30 seconds and then I felt it get ripped out of my hands. And I was like, oh, Alex wanted it back. And I turned around. It was Kalani and he took it and he walked away. He came back like a minute later and he goes, it's gone. And he chugged the rest of it. And I was like, brother, you've been drinking for like 4 hours already. I woke. We got to the convention the next day. We pulled in at like the same time as like Destination Fear of them. And Tanner got out of the car with a Gatorade and a bottle of Pedialyte. I'm like, I see that. And I went up to Kalani's table, and there was like a half-eaten bagel on his table. I'm like, "How you doing?"
Oh
like,
no.
I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna be okay.
A hell of an event to like
Yeah.
start drinking at.
Yeah. Especially because like the daytime stuff goes from like 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Right.
You're there
Yeah.
all day. It's a good time though. It's people are very like laid back. It's everybody's just hanging out, commingling, swapping stories, talking about locations. Steve Gonzalez, he's the one that'll be he buys shots. He did it the last 2 years I've been. He's buying shots for everybody. The first year I went, I wasn't even like, we weren't guests or anything. Dylan was at basic training. I just drove down to go with a couple friends and walk around. I didn't have a table. I just wanted to go hang out. And we're at the hotel after, and we're walking around. And again, I was like, I don't do shots. Like I'll drink beer. Like I'm too old. I can't be doing shots. That's not my thing. And so we're sitting there, and Dave Tango comes up to me. And he's like, here. I'm like, no, I'm good, man. He's like, come on, man, you got it. I'm like, how did you say no to Dave Tango? Like you grew up watching him on Ghost Hunters. The dude's offering you a shot. I'm like, all right, I'll do one. Like you have to, right? At that point. So it's a good time though. It's a lot of fun.
We're excited because we went to Paracon in May, and I feel like again, like the expectations, right? It's a little bit like disorganized and not sure what we were getting into, but I do hear that like Jersey's like a lot there, right? Like that they have like more people, like kind of like a timeline for things and whatnot too. So anytime that we've ever talked to anybody about their experience, they're like, no, you'll like it. Like not having to compare the both of them, but it was like, no, it's definitely a different experience and it's so worth it.
It's very scheduled for like their talks. They have it very well posted what time people are talking, what they're talking about, like what they're going to cover. Which is really cool. It's in a big high school, so they have it in the auditorium where all the talks are. They have all the different classrooms for like the bigger celebrities that are going to have longer lives have their own classrooms, whereas like a lot of other people are in like the gym and like the vendors are in the gym and stuff. We always just tell people like if you're going to talk to Dakota and them at the convention, you better get there before that. They had a 3.5 hour wait both days. Like it's the line is crazy, but they stand there and they meet everybody and take their pictures, and they're really cool. They're really, really down to earth. They're good people.
Yeah, when we went to Penhurst, that's why we bought like the most expensive pass, because I was like, dude, I'm not doing this shit. Like I'm not standing in line for hours upon hours. So like we were there like 2 hours before other people got to get in, and like we probably met them and we were like 4 people like back in their line and we're like, okay, peace out, thank you. Like,
super nice to meet you. I'm gonna go.
I was like, I'll see you in November when this is in like 3 hours.
MadCon is gonna be interesting.
Oh geez.
Well, because they're going there and they haven't had like they've had pretty big celebrities at the conventions. They had like Chad Lindbergh out for one of the early ones. He's obviously pretty well known, but the draw that Project Fear has is just something like I don't think a lot of people can really understand until they see it. It's gonna be a lot of people. It's gonna be a lot of people in the back parking lot at Madison. I know that it's gonna be fun. MadCon's always a great time. It's a ton of fun. It's going to be a lot of people. That's all.
I told Adam, I was like, yo, Adam, get out like your events for the night so that I can like buy it and book my ticket, because there's no way I'm traveling 4 hours to get there at the door and pay you to get in. Like I'll come in the night before and do whatever you got planned for me so that I know that I will be there the next day.
So when we just did FCI Con at Fairfield probably 3 weeks ago, they did it a little bit differently this year, which was cool. It was more of a relaxed hangout than like a very scheduled investigation. So they had the building open. People were inside investigating and having a great time. But it was really, really hot out that day. So also people wanted to be outside. So they had like cornhole set up and they had like a fire going, and like
fun.
People could hang out and like have a couple beers if they wanted to, and then go investigate, obviously not get drunk, but like, you know what I mean? Like it was very, very relaxed instead of a very regimented, like investigation starts at this time, you move at this time, you go here, you go here. So you can get the best of both. You can hang out and investigate at your leisure, which is cool. I think that's what they're planning to do for MadCon this year too. So
yeah, I think that's like what Tanner mentioned, was that it was just more like a kind of like a casual type hangout rather than like something so structured like New Jersey or Paracon. Well, and speaking kind of like full circle type moments too. I mean, you've done hundreds, maybe even thousands of investigations at this point, right? Like you've done documentaries, like you have the YouTube channel, like you've been featured on tons of podcasts, like you have your own events company. So I can imagine like that it's such a whirlwind to go from the 5-year-old boy that was getting poked by his great grandma to where you're at now. So like describe what it means to you to like manage Saratoga County Homestead in New York, and how owning Knights kind of like changed things for you? Like, what does that?
Yeah.
What are those two things mean for you?
It's wild because, you know, growing up when I first started the group when I was 16 or whatever, I always thought, like, I want to do this as my job, but I don't know how. The only way to do it at that point was TV, right? That was the only way to do it. Was like, if you were going to make this your career and you were going to investigate whenever you wanted to, it was going to be, you had to have a TV show. That was kind of what it was back then. So that was always my thought process was, well, maybe someday I'll have a TV show and I get to do this as my job. Like, I hope. And when I was younger, we signed with a production company, the one that does the Dead Files.
Oh, yeah.
So we were signed with them. They flew out from LA. We filmed the whole pilot thing. I mean, I was like 20 at the time. So I was like, holy shit, like this is actually this is going to happen. That's crazy. But it never went anywhere. As normal pilots do. Like you pitch it for a few months and they're like, oh, we got some interest, but maybe, I don't know. And then just never went anywhere, which is fine. I went back into just doing like residential cases and like some historic sites. It got to the point where I was, I think 2 years into my group. Again, I was still young. And I wanted to do, Waverly Hills more. I wanted to do Hillview and Madison and all these places that are, I mean, some of them are expensive. Waverly Hills is $1,000 a night. You know what I mean?
Holy shit.
Yeah. $1,000 or $1,100 for 8 hours. You get 10 people, it's $110 a person, but I'm like, I'm a 17-year-old kid. And I got $4. Like, what am, you know what I mean? Like, how am I getting to Kentucky, first of all? And who am I going with? So it was like, we were doing all these local investigations. And I was like, how can I make it so other people pay for me to investigate, right? So we started reaching out to historic sites that we investigated, and it was kind of just this idea of like, well, hey, we'll do a public ghost hunt for you guys, and since we're a nonprofit, we'll give you guys half the money. We'll give the historic site 50% of the money. All you have to do is unlock the door, tell a history story, and we'll run the ghost hunt. We'll sell the tickets, and we do all that. So we did that for 7 or 8 years, and we'd take the money at the end of the year, and we would take a big group trip the beginning of the next year for free. We would pay for everybody to go on the trip, and it was fun. And it was like, okay, this is cool. This is fun. Like, but I still am working a regular day job and I hate it. Like, it's terrible. It's not fun. And I was like, man, I think if I just scale this up, right? Like, I think I can do this. So I started Haunted Nights in 2019, and it was just kind of like a leap. My wife was already working for herself with her marketing company at that point. So it was very like, I'm going to start this, but I'm not quitting my job, right? Like, we still need, like, we need insurance, like a weekly paycheck. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're kids at that point. I was like 25, 26, you know what I mean? So it was like,
it's like, how do you even know how to do something at that point?
We had just bought a house, which was crazy. And like, we didn't know what we were doing. I'm like, I don't know how to paint. Like, what am I going to do here? And so like, you know what I mean? It was just a lot. And then, so I started the event company, and the first few did really well and they sold out. And I was like, all right, shit, like this might actually work. I might be able to quit my job. And then COVID hit 6 months later. And everybody was like, hey, you can't leave your house anymore for a while. And I was like, that's going to make events pretty tough. But it was about halfway through COVID when we were able to start doing events again, because as long as we wore masks, like 100,000 square foot building with 15, 20 people, it's easy to social distance. And like everybody else there is already dead. So it doesn't really matter. And we can just go hang out and talk. And so like, it was after I had been friends with one of the producers on Destination Fear. And so she would reach out to me every single season and be like, hey, we're looking for spots. What do you think? Like, what's a good spot you've been recently that you think would be good for the show? And so we had just taken over the homestead right at the same time I started Haunted Nights. Like, I started Haunted Nights in like July 2019. We took over the homestead in October, like right after it. And so she reached out in like February, and I was like, wait, I have a perfect spot. Literally nobody has been in here legally besides us in 45 years. Right. So I'm like, this is going to be great. You'll be the first people on TV. So they came out, walked it in March. COVID shut everything down. They filmed it in June of 2020, right in the middle of COVID. And the episode aired in October of 2020, and I was able to quit my job in November of that year.
Wow.
So it was like that really kind of brought everything together. It was like that last little push that Haunted Nights needed to get kind of going. And we started selling merch like literally all over the world, which was insane. Like, shipping stuff to Bulgaria and, France and Australia and all this kind of stuff, which was cool. Because my wife does all the merch. She makes all of our merch. She still does.
Cool.
She does all of our stuff. So
that's awesome.
I was like, hey, you're going to be kind of busy. Sorry.
Still like keeping it in the family, it's still like a family thing.
Yeah. I was like, hey, so I need like 100 sweatshirts. And she's like, when? I'm like, I leave Wednesday. And, that kind of, it still happens. She loves it so much, I think. And, so it's like that happened. And then right after that was Sam and Colby, because they saw it on Destination Fear. And then that push was just like something I I mean,
it was like one of the best like pieces of evidence I've ever seen.
Yeah, Destination Fears thing was crazy. That night it premiered, because that was the first time I saw it. They filmed in June. I talked to Dakota like right at the next day. I texted him. I was like, "Hey man, like I hope you had a good night. Like, what'd you guys think?" He said, "Oh, it was really, really cool. We caught something cool, but I can't tell you." And I was like, "Thanks." So I had to wait like 5 months. The night it came out, I lived like almost an hour from the homestead. It ended at like 11 p.m. I got in my car and drove there. And I just stood in that hallway for like 3 hours. And I was like, just do it again. Like run across the hall. But it's wild. You know what I mean? Like looking back, like I said, with buying Jason Hawes a drink last year, it was kind of like, I think that was really like when it was like, holy shit. Like this is a guy I've been watching on TV for 20 years. Right. And now I'm a guest at the same convention as him. We're eating lunch in the same room. You know what I mean? Like we're not equals, obviously, because he's the godfather at that point of the paranormal. He's like so
but
well
you
known,
have to give yourself the credit that you
do. It just feels really cool to be able to do something that you love as your job every day. You know, getting to just travel. We did 19 states last year. We're going to be in the 20s this year. Like that's just, it's really cool. It's some of those times, like it hit us a couple weeks ago. I think we were in Gettysburg and I was doing my solo, and of course, like I'm trying to focus on my solo and not like shit my pants if something scary happens in here. But I'm in like the Jenny Wade house, and I'm standing in this house from the Civil War where the only civilian fatality of the Battle of Gettysburg happened. Right. And I'm in this house by myself, and I'm standing there and I see the 2 bullet holes in the door, that the bullet that killed her. And that's when it was kind of just like, it's insane, right? Like I get to stand in places like this 5 nights a week. I'm standing a foot away from where she got killed, and I'm by myself in this house. Like it's a really cool feeling. And I think it hits like every once in a while in like a moment like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and in such like iconic locations too. Yeah. Did Dylan put his finger in the door, his ring finger in the door?
He probably did. He probably did.
I was there in May of last year, and it was the first time I was ever in Gettysburg. And of course, we did like the orphanage and the Jenny Wade house too. And they were all like, "Put your finger in the door," because apparently it's like if you put your ring finger in like the bullet hole of the door, that like you have some sort of like romance. It'll happen.
You'll get married.
It's a bullshit lie,
right? Like, which is it's kind of an ironic thing too, right? Because like she got killed while her fiance was a prisoner of war, and then he died like a week later in captivity. I'm like, not a very romantic story there.
Right. I'm like, did I just get like cursed by doing this?
Right.
Or
oh god,
I feel like that would be the opposite effect. But you know,
are we creating like another parallel universe here?
I was gonna get married until I put my finger in the door. And now I can't. Right.
But let me go to the other timeline and see how it worked out.
Yeah. Like if I didn't put my finger in the door, what happens? Right.
Right.
It's just it's cool though. It's fun. Because a lot of times we're so busy, I think, that we like kind of lose track of it because we're on the road, like I said, 5 or 6 days a week. There's times we've been investigating 6, 7 nights in a row with just no sleep. Wow. So it's like you get an hour and a half sleep in the hotel and you got to get up and shower, get out of the hotel, get on the road to the next spot. It kind of just becomes like a blur. But when it's like a little bit more of a downtime, like the Jenny Wade house was, it kind of like sinks in. You're like, holy shit, like this is really cool that I get to do this all the time.
Yeah, it's like I'm here alone. Yeah, well, with Dylan, but like here by ourselves, having this like piece of history just for us.
Yeah.
He was actually, no lie, when I was doing my solo, he was making a Sheets run to get us food.
Oh,
I swear to God. Yeah, I ordered it on the app. He went and picked it up. I got done my solo.
You're like, let's switch. I think you guys switched, and you were like, go me food.
I'm gonna eat my food. You go in. Yeah.
Oh man. So we heard a rumor that you have a real human skeleton from Oddfellow's house.
Yeah, his skull is right here.
Oh, yeah, I heard that like the skull is not attached anymore, and his name is Skippy.
Skippy, yeah. I mean, I can get him.
Good old Skippy.
Featured guest on the podcast. Skippy, welcome.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, he kind of just sits on my desk. I can't imagine what that dude's thinking, right? Like,
what have you brought me into?
Yeah, some dude from the 1800s, and he sits here every night watching me play Fortnite against like 12-year-olds.
Oh my gosh, right?
He's like, "Where's my other timeline? Like, give it to me."
How did I end up here? The rest of his body's literally in my basement. Like, you know,
wild.
I'm gonna get him fixed up. When I got him, he was in really bad shape, so he's got to get like restrung together because he was wired together at one point. That's why there's the bar coming out of his head. But I wanted to be able to like not just leave him in the basement, so the bar had to be replaced anyway, so I kind of just snipped it and just took his head off.
Oh jeez.
I felt a little bit bad, but He's fine. He's
Are you
quiet.
gonna get him a friend?
I want to. I've almost
Yeah.
bought it. I've almost bought another one. They're just so expensive. Like this one,
Right.
I got him really cheap on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because I'm in a lot of weird groups on Facebook because I collect, obviously you can see the wheelchairs behind me. Like I collect a lot of weird things. So I'm in a lot of strange groups. And the guy had posted that he bought an old Oddfellows lodge that they had abandoned after it caught on fire. And he was using it as an art studio. And he had found the coffin with the ceremonial skeleton. He's like, you know, he was cool for the first few years, but he's kind of just taking up space right now. And I don't feel like I'm really respecting him enough by keeping him in the shed, really. So I commented back and I was like, hey, I'll buy him if you were looking to get rid of him. And the guy's like, yeah, you know, sure. I know they go for a lot of money, but I'm not trying to get rich off them. He's like, $200. I said, I'll see you tomorrow. I got in the car and drove 9 hours round trip down to Philadelphia, put the casket in the back of the car and stopped at Eastern State before I left, took a little tour and went back home.
Did he like know what he was buying when he bought like an Oddfellows home?
Yeah, so he knew he was buying the old Oddfellows lodge for the area. It had been abandoned for a while because it had caught fire. It wasn't like terrible damage, but they had just walked away from it because it was old and like they didn't want to deal with it. So they just moved on to a different one. And he literally bought it for an art studio because it's a big grand hall in the middle. And he was going to like paint and do all this stuff in there. And he said he just found it under the stage in there. They had just left it and he moved.
Oh, is that the same one that Project Fear went to with Kalani? I think was
no
in that
different one though. Yeah,
okay,
different
I was
one.
gonna say I don't know how many like Oddfellows places are around,
Yeah.
but I know that was what in Pennsylvania. So I was like, wait a minute, this is sounding oddly familiar.
Yeah, this one was like 15 minutes outside of Philadelphia. It was right outside of downtown Philly. I literally put the casket in my car and I was like, I can't go to Philadelphia and not go to Eastern State, right? So like I parked and I was like, wait, is it? Because when I put it in the car, I was like, man, that looks kind of weird. A casket in the back of my car. I'm like, do you have anything to cover it with? And he gave me like an old painter's tarp. So we put that over. I'm like, that makes it look so much worse now.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Now it's a murder.
And so I just like parked in this parking lot in the middle of downtown Philadelphia with a casket like kind of covered in my trunk. I'm like,
oh my gosh. At least you had a truck though. Like,
yeah, I was like, nah, they probably won't think it's weird. I had no issues, so it was good.
Oh,
that's wild. So we've also heard you collected at least 75 Ouija boards.
Yeah.
What's the number at now? And have you tried to use it to contact Skippy?
Yeah, so it's still sitting right around probably 75 or 80. I haven't bought as many recently. The prices on them have gone crazy in the last few years. I started collecting, I think, in like 2016 or 2017. And like the prices had just gone absolutely insane. I did just buy one like last week on the way home from an investigation because it was cheap on Facebook. But yeah, I think I'm right around 75 or 80 or so. When my office is done, I have to redo all the trim behind me. You can kind of see it on the ground there. We just redid this room, so I'll put them back up. I usually have them on my whole wall, like going up the wall or so, like kind of displaying. But I mean, my oldest board is from like 1890. I have a bunch from the early 1900s.
So you did acquire one. I was gonna say, I knew that you were searching for one from like 1890, 1891. I was like, did you ever get one of those?
I do. It's in one. That's the other thing my wife tolerates with a lot. My collection has grown, so it's kind of starting to bleed out of my office now. Like we have a wheelchair in the entryway. We have display cabinets downstairs.
Oh,
with like
amazing.
all kinds of stuff all over the place. But the only thing she ever really was like hesitant about was the autopsy table and Skippy. She was kind of like, you really need those things in the house. But yeah,
you're gone all the time. So she deals with it.
She deals with it. It's fine. As long as they don't wake her up, she's not too worried about it. If she's sleeping, she wants to sleep. But I mean, we've used we brought one of the like 110-year-old ones to a farmhouse in Kentucky when we did a documentary, and like we try to use it down there. I'm personally not a big believer in them. I think there's way too many, like the human factor ruins it for me, right? Like I think there's way too many things involved. If a ghost can open and close a door or move a chair, why do we have to touch the planchette? Why can't they just spell their name? Like why can't it just move? Because I think people move it 99.9% of the time, whether they know they're doing it or not. There's a thing called the ideomotor effect. So your brain subconsciously is moving it. You swear you're not doing it, but you are. You just don't realize it. So
it's like that part of your brain is like not allowing you to know that you are doing it.
Right. People ask, great grandpa, what was our secret word? And it spells out the secret word. And they're like, no, I swear I wasn't doing it. Well, your subconscious wanted it to happen so bad that you moved it. So I've never used one in the house, but one of the ones I got last year, I set it on my dining room table and left a planchette on it just because I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to take a picture of it. So I left it there. And went about my business. I went to bed and got up the next morning, and my wife got up and came downstairs, and the planchette had turned like almost 90 degrees on the board. And everybody's like, "Oh, well, you have a dog." I was like, "Our dog is a 62-pound pit bull that sleeps in our bed. She's not getting on the dining room table, and she's not getting out of bed without us knowing, because she's not graceful at all." And nobody else was in the house. It's just us. So I don't know who moved it, but it was like a little bit of a turn. But it was cool because I had the picture from the night before to compare it, and it had moved. It had moved a little bit. So that's really the only one I've ever seen like actually do anything.
Yeah, because you see all these YouTube videos of like glasses breaking, like someone used the glass as a planchette and it explodes. I think the guy is in like some UK unit and like fire start, but then you're always just like the skeptic in me is like, did you do this behind the scenes before you started filming kind of thing? You never know.
And it's like, I guess, I mean, I don't see why they couldn't work. It's not any different than anything else we use. That's why I don't buy into the whole, like, they're portals to hell and you're opening up doorways for demons. I mean, if you're asking a ghost to spell yes on a Ouija board, how is that any different than asking him to light up a REM pod, right? Like, you're doing the same thing. It's just a different medium that you're using to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
So
what other?
Oh, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, what other oddities are in your 100-year-old house?
Oh, man, we have the Ouija boards. We have Skippy, obviously. The autopsy table I got a handful of years ago. I have a jail cell bed from a haunted jail. I think we're up to 3 like at-home electroshock therapy machine things now. A bunch of medical tools. God, what else do I have? 3 or 4 headstones in my house. Wheelchairs. I have 4 of the antique wicker wheelchairs now. I didn't have room for a 4th, but it ended up somehow falling into my lap, and it was one from the homestead. And it's the only one that we know that has ever come out of the homestead that wasn't trash. So I had to keep it, obviously. So yeah, I'm up.
You're gonna need a house for your oddities.
Yeah, I'm running out of room. It's starting to bleed downstairs. Like I said, we have 2 display cabinets in the dining room just full of like Ouija boards and all kinds of stuff. I came home one day, and my wife's not religious or anything like that either, but came home one day and I noticed there was a couple crystals above some doorways. I'm like, she's like, just in case, just in case. I'm like, all right, whatever. She's like, I'm the one that's always here. So like,
right, makes her feel more comfortable.
Everything.
Yeah. Sometimes like, we've had doors open and close here and like lights turn on and off and stuff. But again, the house is 114 years old. And like, we know a woman died in our bedroom. We've met the family that used to live here and everything. So we have weird stuff that happens, but we don't know if it's the house, me, or my stuff at this point. So we just kind of live with it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you'd have to, because what else? I mean, like, really, what else are you going to do? You're clearly not going to stop collecting things.
No.
And they're all going to continue to accumulate.
Yeah.
And I wonder too, because like some people believe that like even like inanimate objects are like sentient, so that they have their own stuff. So I wonder, like, when you leave your office, like, what does the energy that every single one of those things carries? Like, what do they do together?
It's like a creepier version of Toy Story kind of thing. Like, do they get up and move around? Like, is Skippy playing with the Ouija board? Or, what are they doing? But it's funny. The board I just got last week, the lady said, it's an older board from the 50s. And she said, my mom bought this for us brand new back then. And like, as kids, we used it, and we contacted some spirit named Aurora, and we would talk to her all the time. And she's like, yeah, so that's just the story with it. So good luck. And I was like, what do you mean good luck? Like, what do you mean? Is it a bad story? Yeah.
Right. Did you ever figure it out? Have you contacted Miss Aurora?
I brought it in and it's sitting on the wheelchair next to me right now, and it hasn't moved or anything. So I don't know.
Oh.
It's getting acclimated. It's only been here like a week. So
it's got to get used to the surroundings before things start happening.
Meeting everybody else first,
right?
Watch, just acknowledging this, it'll like kickstart something.
It'll like float later or something. It'd be pretty cool.
So, and what is it about like you being involved in like making the world's like largest like Ouija board or something? What was that like?
So there's an organization called the Talking Board Historical Society. So it's a historical society for Ouija boards. I'm good friends with the chairman. They call him the chairman of the board. It's super corny. But his name's Robert Murch. He actually lives out in Colorado, and really, really good guy. He started it back then. He's been collecting since like the 90s. So he has everything and anything to do with Ouija. He's really good friends with the Fold family, who patented the Ouija board, like started them out way back in the day. He's good friends with like their descendants. He has all kinds of stuff from William Fold, the guy that really took it to the next level and made it what it is. So he's kind of the one that spearheads that. And one of the members of the Talking Board Historical Society board his name is Rick, and he's an artist. He's a tattoo artist and an artist, and he wanted to break the world record for the world's largest Ouija board. So he hand painted 98 sheets of 4x8 plywood into a Ouija board. And in October of 2019, we got together in Salem, Mass, and put the whole thing together out in Salem Commons. It took us 2 days to put it together in the pouring rain. Ripley's Believe It or Not was out there. The planchette was functional. It was 400 pounds, but it would move. It was really cool. It was out there for just that weekend, and then they took it apart and shipped it back home. And he's brought like little pieces of it to different conventions and stuff. But it was cool. There was like a wedding going on across the street, and they saw it and came out and did like wedding pictures on the Ouija board and everything.
Amazing.
It was really, really cool.
Right?
Yeah, Ouijazilla is what it was called. And Ripley's Believe It or Not did a whole thing on it. We're in one of the Ripley's books from back then. He was going to have Guinness come out, but it was like you had to pay Guinness like $10,000 for one of them to even come out and like look at it. So he was like, I'll just go with Ripley's. Like Ripley's wanted to do it.
Right.
So he went with Ripley's. So it's technically not a Guinness World Record, but it is, as far as we know, the biggest actual board that's ever been made, especially with a functioning planchette. I know the Grand Midway Hotel has one on the roof too. That's pretty close in size. They have one painted on the roof. But it was cool. And now they have, there's a Ouija board museum in Salem called the Witchboard Museum. That's run by John. He's one of the head members of the Talking Board Historical Society. And they just opened another museum down in Baltimore, which is actually where the first like factories were for the Ouija boards back in the day.
Oh, cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What was it like being in Salem and then doing that just like because it's Salem? So like, what was that experience like there?
Ah, man, being in Salem in October is a lot of people. It's a lot of people. I've been in Salem a few different times throughout the years. But in October, it's just got a feeling to it. It's just really cool. Everybody is, every girl there has a witch hat on and a black skirt and black, everybody, you know what I mean? Or they're dressed as like the Sanderson sisters from Hocus Pocus, but everybody's just in a good mood. It's super fun. You got the fall weather and like the leaves and everything. It's kind of like being in a Halloween movie. And then building the world's largest Ouija board on top of it. It was just like, it was really fun. It was a good time.
Yeah, it's freaking crazy. Because that would be my first thing is like, you're at like the city I feel like everybody thinks of when they think of like haunted stuff, doing really cool haunted things. Could be, right? But you're like this giant Ouija board, and then you are seeing people in like hats and skirts and like witches, and I couldn't even like imagine like what that did really feel like, because I've always wanted to go. It's not like too terribly far. I feel like nowhere on the East Coast is really all that far, at least in like the Northeast. It's really not all that far to get to. So what would be like your number one place that you'd have to go if we had to go? Like, what were you supposed to go?
On the East Coast, out like up here in the Northeast, the Homestead is a great spot. Not to say anything, but the Homestead is a great spot. Courtney loves that building. Like, she's cried there a number of times because of like just the damage that the building's got. She's like attached to that building. But she'll be out here in a couple of weeks and I'll torment her and scare her in there. So that'll be fun. But Homestead's a great spot. Wilson Castle in Proctor, Vermont. We've been going there since 2014. It's a beautiful, beautiful mansion from the 1800s. It's been the same family since 1939. They're the nicest people in the world. Really active, beautiful, beautiful house. Those are really good spots. Fort Knox up in Maine is really cool. And it's one that not a lot of people do. It was on Destination Fear years ago, I think season 2 or whatever. We usually do one event weekend there a year. That's, I think, a really untouched location that it's just so far north. It's like 6.5 hours from us here. So it's way up there. It's in Bucksport, Maine. It's active. It's really, really cool. It's creepy, big, long, dark hallways that are very narrow. Those are really good spots out this way. Oliver House was great in Massachusetts. We've done Norwich State Hospital. That place is terrifying. I hate that place.
That was one of my favorite Destination Fear.
I hate that place. I hate it there because it's a constant state of anxiety just because people do break in there all the time. So it's like anytime you hear a noise, you're like, okay, is it a ghost or is it a living person that's got a gun? Right? Like, am I going to die or is this, I would rather it be a ghost, right? At that point. So that place it's super creepy. It's super active. It's put on the same abandonment level as the Homestead where people just go in all the time. That's a great spot. Yeah, Ohio's got Madison. Madison's fantastic. Madison's by far one of my favorite locations I've ever been to. I would say I would say New York has Homestead. That's my thing.
So where did you see Dylan's doppelganger?
So that was at the Homestead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we were up there cleaning for Destination Fear because, like, again, the building's been abandoned for 45 years. It's a mess in there. And so they had walked it, the producers, and they're like, okay, yeah, we want to film here, but we need, X, Y, and Z done for safety before they come in here and walk around at night. There's a lot of low-hanging pipes and like broken walls and stuff like that. We just had to clean up some of the debris. But it was right during COVID, so we couldn't get big volunteer groups of people out there to clean up. So 95% of it was me and Dylan every Saturday and Sunday for 4 months by ourselves, 10 hours a day, shovels and wheelbarrows, just cleaning the homestead. And so, like, there was one day in particular, I was cleaning in the front lobby, and he was right behind the front stairs in the kitchen. They kind of connect. He's around the back, and there's a hallway that connects them. And we had been up there all day. And like, I'm just shoveling, doing whatever. And I had my head down shoveling. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw him walk out of the little hallway. He had the shovel and he stopped and looked at me and just turned around and walked back in. Like, I never even looked up at him, but I saw him come out. I could see the shovel, see him walk out, stopped, and then turn around and walk back in. And I was like, that's weird. Maybe he thought he heard something and wasn't sure if it was me or somebody breaking in, but like, he knows I'm out here. So that was kind of strange. So I kind of went back to shoveling. And then I was like, no, that's weird. I'm going to go ask him. Like, I don't know if he needed help with something. So I just put my shovel down and I walked in there. I said, like, what do you need? He said, what are you talking about? I was like, what do you need? He's like, nothing. What do you mean? I was like, well, why did you just come out and then just turn around and walk back in? And like, it's kind of weird. And he's like, I haven't left this room in like 2 hours. He's like, I've been sitting in here pulling down these, like, I haven't left the room. And I was like, you didn't just come out in the hallway? He's like, no, not. He's like, I swear. He's like, I didn't leave. And I was like, all right, well, whoever it was just walked back in here. So I'm going to go. Good luck. I'm going back out here. They kind of look like you. Good luck. So it's wild. But then again, like, is that just a residual haunting of Dylan from the weekend before? Right? Like, is that the residual haunting of Dylan from the weekend before or the weekend after? Like, we don't know, right? Like, we put blood, sweat, and tears into that building. I know there's something of us left up there energy wise. Who says that we have to be dead for that to start happening if it's just residual haunting, if it's just energy? So that's kind of where I lean towards, like, doppelgangers and stuff. I think they're just residual hauntings of people that are still alive.
Well, it's still, I'm sure, is like daunting to see though. Yeah. Like, even if whatever you could like explain it away, it still has to like get you to your core.
Yeah. Oh yeah. One Dylan is plenty. We do not need two. we do not need two of those.
Oh. No. Speaking of Dylan, though, he has been investigating with you since he was 12 years old. Yeah. What advice would you give to our younger listeners, like Dylan, who might be starting out as teenagers and might not be able to access certain events or investigations or get devices due to their age?
Look for public ghost hunts. A lot of locations will put on their own too. And a lot of them, if it's their own event, they have sometimes a little bit more lax restrictions for age because they don't have to worry about an outside group coming in for insurance and all that. But there's plenty of places that can allow 12, 14, 16-year-olds in. Obviously, with somebody who's 18 or older, you're always going to have that. That's just a liability insurance thing. But look around. It's not unheard of for places to allow people to come in as long as they have somebody that's 18 or older with them. Do ghost tours, ghost walks. My very first EVP I ever caught was on my cell phone, and it was on a ghost tour in Cape Cod. We branched off in this haunted cemetery. The group all went one spot. I took my cell phone, this little primitive like flip phone back in the day that had a voice recorder on it. I went off in the way back corner of the cemetery and sat down by a headstone, and I just started doing EVP questions, and I caught my very first response. And that to me was like, again, holy shit, like this is real. Like, I know nobody answered that question. I was by myself. So like, there's ways to do it before you can get into places like Waverly Hills. A lot of locations have started doing teen nights or teen investigation nights where they let younger people in with a parent or guardian or something like that too, because they know it's popular. It's popular for kids that age now too. And I think a lot of people get so stuck on like the equipment on TV shows or the YouTube channels, and you don't need it. You go buy a $30 voice recorder from Walmart. It's going to work great. DR60s are good because they're voice activated. That's why. That's the only reason, really. I don't think they catch EVPs any better than any other voice recorder, personally, in my opinion. But when you're filming for a video and you have to do a playback, you can't have 5 minutes of silence, right? So like if I do a 5-minute EVP session and there's no responses, that playback is 30 seconds and we can move on to the next thing. That's literally the only reason we use them for videos. I don't think they're any better. They're just better for filming. It's so you're not sitting there for 5 minutes and then catching nothing.
And they have like
Right,
a
and
little
so
red light too,
Right,
don't they? Like
right.
if something
Mhm.
is
Yep.
talking, you guys are silent.
Yep.
That's kind of nice to
Yep.
see.
It gives you a little visual indication that you might be picking something up.
So you're really just paying for time, not quality. Like not like the
yeah.
quality of the
Yeah.
EVP. You're just paying for the time.
Right. Because a lot of times they're harder to understand. And like again, before we started YouTube with the O group, we used regular Olympus and Sony voice recorders that you can buy at Walmart and Radio Shack back in the day before they all closed. And like we caught some really, really crystal clear EVPs, whispering voices, way clearer than anything we've ever caught on a DR60. I mean, DR60s are a lot of times hard to understand. They're very garbled and raspy and all that. But
and I always wondered why. Because because we have like just I think we both have Sony, so it's like you know, we pay for those, but then these are like thousands and thousands of dollars, and when I hear them on like YouTube or a TV show, I'm like, I can't even really make it out. Like I'm sure it's different when you're like in the moment and you can hear it yourself. But yeah, I always wondered that. I'm like, why does it sound just like so much different?
Yeah, I think it's just the technology because they're so old. They're from the 80s, 90s. They stopped making them in the 90s, so like they just weren't as good. But that's funny because like the story says that they stopped making them because people were returning them so much because they were picking up voices that weren't there and they thought they were broken. They were picking up like they would go use them at like a college lecture and they would have like the professor talking, but then in between they would have like all this other stuff and they're like, oh, this is broken, I can't use this. This is useless, and they'd return them. And so
I did not know that.
Yeah,
no,
so it's one of the stories. It's one of the stories.
That's funny. How ironic.
Yep.
Right. That is so freaking crazy. Well, and like you mentioned, like just going to places for people who are younger, like my son, I have some sort of paranormal something on TV all the time.
Yeah.
So he's like watching it, like he won't even go up the stairs to like go pee in the bathroom by himself unless he has a flashlight. And on his way up the stairs, he's like, is anybody here? Make a noise.
Just in case.
And we go to the location that I was mentioning earlier, like kind of where we had the story of the you know, the woman and the man. We were there today. They like put on this family fun day, and they like right now have a junior ghost hunt that's going on. It's like all ages are welcome. So my son and I went in there today before that event started, and I just gave him a flashlight and he had like free roam, and I'm like, boy, you're asking some good questions. Like this is like a future little ghost hunter. I was like, you're 4. I was like, don't worry, I'll sage you in the car on the way home.
You're getting the sage. That was Dylan though, because like when Dylan started ghost hunting me when he was 12, he came to one of our public events. That's how he started, and because his mom worked with my wife at the time, and so they both worked together. And she's like, oh, my son would be super into this, like he would love to come check it out. So then they came to an event, and he was asking great questions, like really intelligent stuff. It's been downhill since then, but like he came in at his peak, right? And he was asking really, really good stuff. And again, he was 12, he was this big, you know, and so he came back a few more times, and we're like, hey, this kid's pretty smart. He's asking, he spoke like French at that point too. He's like, he still speaks a little bit of French and a little bit of German. So like he's asking questions in French because they're supposed to be like French people at this location. And so I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Like, and he started going with it from there, but they can do it. It's a whole new thing now. Like they grow up with it. You know what I mean? Like, especially with Project Fear, with Sam Colby or Exploring with John, like any of those guys that are on YouTube, that's their fan base is kids of that age, 12, 15, 16, 17 at that age. They're all growing up watching this stuff now. And it's way more accessible now than even when I started 15 years ago. It was hard to get into places back then. They looked at us like we were crazy. They're not risking us being in their building after dark. And now it's like any place that's over 40 years old, they're like, hey, we're haunted as hell. Come on in. You know what I mean? Like, it's a whole different business now than it was back then.
Which is also super cool because I think that, like, you know, when we do talk about people that are coming in for investigations, bringing their own values and beliefs and whatnot, like when you're younger, you don't have that type of stuff to influence you in a certain way. And I think that just brings an entirely different environment to a ghost hunt.
You have way less like life experience to tell you no on things, right? Like, and I think that's why kids are more susceptible to it. Like their minds haven't been told no yet. Like that's why I think I saw my great grandmother at that time. Like if she was sitting there now, I don't think I'd see her. I don't think I would interact with her like that same way. I think it's just like whatever it is in your brain, your mind, your subconscious, whatever you want to call it. Like, again, it hasn't been taught this stuff doesn't exist yet. You can't, you know what I mean? Like, whereas now, like a lot of kids, imaginary friends, a lot of people now are like, maybe that wasn't just an imaginary friend kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and their intuition, I think, is much more easily accessed. Like, if they can, like, feel something, they know that that's what it is, and they'll just go with it. And a lot of us have been, like, told to turn that off.
Yeah. desensitized to everything now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is
It's
true.
wild.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, Steve. This has been great. We had a blast. And you'll definitely have to come back again and chat. And we'll definitely see you in New Jersey too.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be fun. Thank you guys for coming on. I had a blast.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, listeners and watchers on YouTube, next week we have some new friends to introduce to y'all. Our pals from Dark Hollow Paranormal will join us to talk about what it's like to be a part of a paranormal investigative team in a largely untapped location. You don't want to miss this. So, until next Thirsty Thursday, y'all, cheers.
Cheers.